Hey, I'm Merlin, and this is In Progress. Okay, so for the first episode, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about why I'm making this video series and where I am right now. So I'm right now on a cruise ship out here in the Atlantic, and a TV pilot is being shot on board. I'm on board for 2 weeks for work, and then I'm going back home. And so I figured I might as well start the series while I'm here and just take you along with me. So it's called In Progress for a reason, because I figured any creator has two things that he can show. One is basically what they're creating, and the other thing is what is going into that creational process. Yeah, so basically things like that. I want to show these things to you, and I want to tell you about what they make me think about, or what questions they let me ask, and how I reflect on putting experiences like that, views, thoughts, conversations, things that I encounter in life into creation. Because being an artist is basically about self-expression, and so what goes into that self-expression is also what goes into being you. So I want to try to show a little bit of that. So basically what I mean is that I also want to show less of what I create on this channel and more of what goes into creating and what goes into creating specifically for me. So being out on the ocean, even if it's only for one day, gives me this immense sense of vastness. I tried to capture that in this sketch. I'll leave you a link below. And you know what? It's actually really hard to capture that with words. It's this very weird experience where everything seems just like really, really, really big, and you seem extremely tiny. So being in different parts, in different countries and on the ocean all this time definitely does something to the way I approach creating. If I sit down at the piano, or if I sit down to do a sketch in Ableton or in Cubase, it doesn't matter if it's a beat or if it's a classical piece or if it's an electronic piece, there's something that feels different about it. There's something of how I can notice that the environment impacts me in a very profound way. It's not necessarily that just because we're on a beach island I make beach music all day, but something's different, and I think it's maybe also a plus to get out of your comfort zone, to change the environment that you're working in. Also, on the whole note of sketching and showing it to people and letting unfinished stuff be seen by others, I'm going to let you in on a little sketch that I did today. It's just a really quick sketch I did in a little break I had, and yeah, so this is it. that's the little sketch I made today. Maybe it becomes something. I really think it would be cool if someone would like rap on it or something. So I can't really do that yet. I might eventually try to learn that. But if anybody seeing this wants to like sort of feel it out and try it for himself, just shoot me a message or something. We could maybe collaborate on a track together. And the second part is that this channel is also about committing to sucking. So I've never made videos before, not in this way, and I'm usually the kind of guy who obsesses about technology, who obsesses about technique, who obsesses about everything, learning every possible thing, so that the first thing I make is already going to be really good. So I know this is the first video that I'm making, and it's going to suck. You have to eventually get to terms with that anybody could watch this, and anybody could see something that's very, very intimate and very private. And I don't necessarily know if I feel comfortable with sharing such a personal part of myself with the world. But because there's a lot of people out there that do that kind of thing, and it creates such tremendous value for me, and I learn so much from them, I figured eventually I have to do it. So I better start now and suck at it for a while. So hopefully by the time I make episode 250 or something like that, this is going to be a series that has a huge following, provides tremendous value for other artists and creators, and has something of a high productional value, which it lacks right now. I think it's an important part of the experience of being an artist to show your sketches and your unfinished works to some people. It doesn't have to be the entire internet, but it can be, and in this day that could yield a lot of valuable feedback and interesting responses that might help you develop it further to where you want it to be. So doing this kind of thing actually to me feels really scary. It's also exciting and it's thrilling. It's also scary in this way because I know that normally by researching everything and watching every tutorial and every review and reading every article or book on a subject before I even start to, draw my first line on the paper or make my first note, I try to create a certain sense of security for myself and for my creation. And I guess what I'm trying to say is probably every artist feels like that in a way where you want to try to create that security to not fail. But I think that sense of security that you're creating is actually just an illusion, because failing is an enormous part of creating something, and you have to fail several times just to get to that one really good thing. And that failing teaches you something. Every time that you fail reaching that goal that you set for yourself or that you're imagining, you learn something about how not to get there. And eventually that shows you the way that you get there. So I think failing and being bad at something and horrendously like falling on your face with projects is an extremely valuable and important and necessary part of being a creative. So the question is, I guess, how do you get comfortable with this kind of vulnerability as an artist? How do you get comfortable with taking something that's very deep inside of you and very private and putting it out there in whatever shape or form, and then you have to stand there and you stand up for it, and other people look at it and some get it and some don't, and some criticize you and some compliment you. And I don't know if you're supposed to care about that. I certainly do. Like, I care how people see the things that I make. And so I guess that's why it's scary to make something in general, but it's even more scary to put something out in a really rough form where it's just a sketch and where you commit to not obsessing on your perfectionism when you're creating something. So something that's totally strange about being on a cruise ship is you have these endless corridors, and they always freak me out. I think they're kind of like, I don't know, like in The Shining or something. And well, yeah, you have to walk along those to get to your cabin. So it kind of seems to be like a weird philosophical parable or a parallel to, life. Because it's an endless corridors with lots and lots of doors, and you can't get into every one of them. Only one of them is yours. So let's talk about why it's called in progress. This refers to what I mentioned, committing to sucking. So this whole channel, this whole video series is basically a work in progress, and it's also there to show you other works in progress. And I want to share that with you as well. So it's not going to be only about one thing, it's going to be about many things, but in a way it's all about creating and sucking and doing it anyways. So here's something that I've been thinking about recently. I've been sort of rediscovering pop music, and I noticed that I have an extremely strong bias against it. So it was basically when I grew up listening to lots of alternative music and rock and some underground hip-hop and stuff like that, and I sort of started to discard pop as this so quote-unquote unworthy form of art, like, you know, like cheap and easy. And then as I was browsing through Spotify recently, I came across some music that I really liked. I kept listening to it. It's a band called Made in Heights. I'll leave you a link below. I think they're making wonderful, fabulous music. It's very, very calm. It's very, very, very minimalistic, and really, really beautiful. Something in it really speaks to me and inspires me. I might try creating something like that eventually. So when I tried to classify what kind of music that might be, I came up with all kinds of things, but eventually I figured out, oh, that's pop music, and I think it can be classified as that very clearly. So I went and flipped Spotify radio on, listened to a bunch of stuff, and discovered there's a lot of pop music I really like. Pop music really stands for, is actually the original term, right? Popular music. So a lot of people like this stuff. And I guess the grown-up way of looking at art in popular culture is that sometimes I can relate to something that everybody else likes, and sometimes I can't relate to it. And that could have several reasons. But that's also true for any other style. Because really, I think every artist sort of deserves to be identified not on what his colleagues or other artists make, but by what his own work is like. And if you can relate to that, then it's good work for you. I think it's like art is not about what genre or subgenre or cultural group you belong to, or at least it's not necessarily about it, and it's not necessarily only about that. So yeah, I think I'm basically going to distance myself from this immature way of looking at creations and at art based on their category or based on their label, and definitely not downgrading or condescending upon a piece of music or a piece of art just because it belongs to popular culture or it is something that many, many people enjoy. At the same time, I'm also not gonna like something just to make the point that I'm different because it's so alternative and it's so not pop culture. You shouldn't have to actually justify it in any other way than, oh no, this I connect to this and this appeals to me. So that's what I learned today. All right, so I'll see you next time.